Okay, let's just dive right into this. You know, it's wild. We are living in a world that is more hyperconnected than at any other point in human history. I mean, we can instantly message someone on the exact opposite side of the planet, scroll through hundreds of life updates in a minute. And yet, there's this silent epidemic sweeping across the globe. It's the ultimate paradox of our time. We've got 1,000 friends sitting right in our pockets, but so many of us feel completely isolated in real life. So, in today's explainer, we're going to unpack the actual research on loneliness. We're going to see exactly what this profound isolation is doing to our minds and our bodies. Now, we usually think of loneliness as just, a fleeting emotion. A sad afternoon, maybe a weekend where your plans fell through. But what if I told you this feeling is actually as dangerous as a diagnosed physical disease? Yeah, you heard that right. The medical and psychological sources we're looking at today reframe this entire concept completely. Think about the stark difference between a real, tangible connection and the digital illusion we're all so used to. On one hand, genuine connection. It involves eye contact, those subtle cues of body language, a true back and forth emotional exchange. But on the other hand, spending hours behind screens, it creates this false, emotionally dry sense of connection. In fact, over-relying on digital spaces can actually blunt our real-world social skills. It gets to the point where real-life human encounters start to feel like a heavy burden, or just this exhausting effort. And look, the impact isn't just in your head. Loneliness is a state of isolation that poses severe, documented physical threats. The research highlights that chronic isolation actually suppresses your immune system, which makes you way more susceptible to illness. It disrupts your sleep cycles, leading to total exhaustion. And get this, it significantly increases your risk for heart disease. Your body is quite literally, physically reacting to the lack of a human tribe. So, if it damages the heart and the immune system, you gotta wonder, what is chronic isolation doing to our central processor? Just how destructive is loneliness to the human brain over the long haul? Well, the data from a recent global study on cognitive decline gives us some pretty startling answers.
The numbers are honestly staggering. This massive global study revealed that experiencing loneliness increases your overall risk of developing dementia by 9%. 9%. That is a massive neurological impact, and it stems entirely from a social and emotional state.
But it doesn't stop there. There is also an 8% increased risk of transitioning from a state of normal, healthy cognition right into early memory and thinking issues. So the early stages of cognitive decline are tangibly accelerated just by being isolated. And the impact isn't just on the onset of these cognitive issues, it actually affects recovery too. If someone already has mild cognitive impairments, experiencing loneliness drops their likelihood of recovering normal cognitive function by 3%. Basically, it acts as a barrier, actively preventing the brain from healing and bouncing back. Now, as good consumers of data, we definitely need to acknowledge the nuance here. This is an observational link. The researchers stress that while loneliness and cognitive decline are strongly connected, they haven't proven a strict cause and effect relationship just yet. It's highly possible that the relationship goes both ways, right? Like experiencing early, maybe unnoticed cognitive changes might actually be the thing that causes people to withdraw socially and feel lonelier in the first place. So, knowing all these physical and neurological stakes, how do we actually escape this mental trap? How do we rewire the brain to protect our minds from the damaging effects of isolation? Fortunately, psychological sources point us toward a very specific, actionable solution: cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. Let's look at how this therapy starts. We have an actual item from a psychological loneliness scale used by researchers. Translated, it essentially says, I feel lonely despite having many acquaintances. It perfectly validates a very modern irony, doesn't it? You can have hundreds of followers, thousands of contacts in your phone, and still feel completely alone. This is the exact sentiment researchers look for. Identifying and acknowledging this exact feeling that you are surrounded by people but still isolated is step one. From there, cognitive behavioral therapy aims to track down the negative thought patterns that are driving that feeling and fix them. To fix these patterns, we really have to understand what psychologists call schemas. Think of schemas as the brain's faulty wiring. They're cognitive structures built up over time that cause automatic, negative, and distorted views of yourself, the world around you, and your future. They basically sustain a depressed mood and act like this dark filter on how you interpret everyday social events. One of the primary faulty wires is dichotomous thinking. This is categorizing life strictly into black and white. If an interaction isn't perfectly positive, it just must be entirely negative. This absolute extreme mindset completely prevents us from seeing the gray areas, the subtle nuances, and the natural ebb and flow of normal human relationships. Next up is magnification. And man, our brains can play terrible tricks on us here. This is when you exaggerate the importance of a minor negative event while totally minimizing the positive ones. A tiny social misstep, like, say, an awkward pause in a conversation, is magnified to feel like a massive, catastrophic rejection. And of course, that just fuels the desire to isolate even further.
And then there's personalization. This is when someone unfairly carries the immense weight of situations that are completely out of their control. The research uses the heartbreaking example of a child feeling responsible for their parents' separation. Lonely individuals often personalize the actions of others in a similar way. Like, if a friend is too busy to text back, the lonely person automatically assumes it's because they're unlovable, rather than the friend just, being busy.
So, how exactly does CBT dismantle these distortions? Well, the mechanism is highly structured. Step 1. Identify those irrational automatic thoughts, the magnification, the personalization. Step 2. Aggressively challenge and refute them using logic. And step 3. Replace those distorted thoughts with rational, effective actions and viewpoints. It is quite literally rewiring the brain's software.
But look, therapy is only one piece of the puzzle. Let's pivot from cognitive solutions for a second and talk about the physical reality of our bodies. Because overcoming that heavy lethargy of isolation, that requires tangible physical health changes too. So, what steps can we actually take in the physical world to support our minds? The research highly recommends starting with your body's chemistry. Before you just assume your exhaustion and weakness are purely psychological, consult a doctor. Check your vitamin D, your vitamin B12, and your thyroid function. Deficiencies in these specific areas are directly linked to profound lethargy, which makes it physically harder to break out of social isolation. Finally, there's a necessary lifestyle shift required. You really need a diet rich in omega-3 fatty acids and nutritious proteins to fuel your cognitive function. And just as importantly, you need to reduce stimulants, like excessive caffeine. High stimulant intake can psychosomatically feed anxiety, artificially raising your heart rate and mimicking panic. And what does that do? It pushes you even further into isolation. So we've looked at the severe physical and mental tolls of loneliness, from a heightened risk of dementia all the way to the trap of cognitive distortions. And we've mapped out both psychological and physical solutions. Now, I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. Don't let the digital illusion win. Step out from behind the screen. Who is one person you can reach out to for a real, genuine connection in the real world today? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I highly encourage you, go make that connection right now.